I'm reading from the Apostle Paul's letter to the Christian church in Rome, Romans chapter 8, verse 11. The Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. And just as God raised Christ Jesus from the dead, he will give life to your mortal bodies by this same Spirit living within you. Thank you to Columbia Theological Seminary and the Hispanic and Latinx Association for the invitation to share with you a reflection as we honor Hispanic Heritage Month. I wish I could be with you in the same room where we could experience one another's presence, but unfortunately, we are now learning to connect virtually until it's safe to be together again. I want to reflect with you on a piece of wisdom my grandmother shared with me before she passed away in January 2017. I came to know God in what Latinx theologians call abuelita theology. Latinx theologians acknowledge that in our communities, often the best theologians have no formal religious education, and they are often our grandmothers and mothers. The first theologian I studied was Feliciana Gonzalez Sanchez, my grandmother. Feliciana's God was fiercely committed to her well-being, and it was she who made demands on God to care for her family. She became a widow 3 months after arriving to the United States as a Cuban refugee. She prayed with her eyes open and empowered me with her dichos, her wise sayings, to live unapologetically. She told me, "Hierba mala nunca muere," weeds never die. Through this dicho, I came to understand that I could flourish and find life in places where my presence was not welcomed, nurtured, or desired. Indeed, some weeds refuse to die and are consequently hard to kill. My lived experience as the first American-born child of Cuban refugees and my pursuit of an unconventional life affirms what Chicana cultural theorist Gloria E. Anzaldúa called la herida abierta, the open wound. La herida abierta, in Anzaldúa's best-known book, Borderlands, La Frontera, The New Mestiza, she explains borderlands as both geographical and figurative spaces. As a figurative space, our bodies are borderlands and a site of suffering in cultural contexts where distinctions are made between insiders and outsiders. Borders distinguish us from them, and privilege defines and protects those who belong inside from those who are outside the acceptable bounds. This, too, is a source of suffering and consciousness raising. Anzaldúa explains how a third space is created where los atravesados, the traversed, lived in la herida, the wound, which before a scab forms, hemorrhages again, the lifeblood of two worlds merging to form a third country, a border culture. The border culture is where los atravesados live. She lists the multiple communities who belong to los atravesados, the prohibited and forbidden, the squint-eyed, the perverse, the queer, the troublesome, the mongrel, the mulatto, the half-breed, the half-dead. In short, those who cross over, pass over, or go through the confines of the normal. In such bodies, the border is an analogy for internal conflict caused by norms and individuals' transgression of defined cultural expectations. This transgression is la herida abierta, the open wound, that is continually re-injured even as it gains the ability to right the wrongs by speaking its truth. Anzaldúa claims that while the border is the site of suffering, the border is also where acts of rebellion by los atravesados move humanity toward a more just end. She posits that mestizex identities emerge in the borderlands and create a third space, a borderland. Mestizexos, according to Anzaldúa, generate wisdom for attending to the wounds of la herida abierta responsible for suffering. Jesus was a mestizo. Jesus was a mestizo who belonged to los atravesados. He was the illegitimate son of a peasant mother living under Roman cultural, political, and economic colonization in the northern borderlands of Galilee. He spoke Aramaic and Greek with an accent. Moreover, Jesus was from Nazareth, a disparaged small town within Galilee. Jesus knew marginalization and the violence of assimilation that pressures residents to adopt foreign cultural, economic, and political practices and identities. I understand Jesus' mission to be what the Spanish philosopher José Ortega y Gasset calls el proyecto vital, the project of life. In Meditaciones del Quijote, Ortega y Gasset writes, "Yo soy yo y mis circunstancias, Y si no la salva ella, no me salvo yo. I am I and my circumstances. And if I don't save them, I won't save myself. In this spirit, Jesus inaugurates his movimiento, his movement, outlined in the Nazareth Manifesto in Luke 4, verses 18 through 19, in the East Los Angeles of his day, and he chooses a borderland region to recruit los atravesados to launch his plan to usher in a new world order. Jesus' Proyecto Vital resulted in crucifixion, a legally authorized killing of a person by the state. The resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth is twofold. First, the witness of his physical body appearing to his followers. Second, the immortal movimiento that, though faced with challenging circumstances, continues to do its work in the world. Indeed, as the Apostle Paul's words state, Hierba mala nunca muere. And I have come to find this same truth present in the long history I am a part of. I come to know myself as already resurrected when I place myself within a particular genealogy, a heritage. I begin to grow courage and strength as I live always threatened with the voices and spirits of the ancestors who remind me that as I am threatened by death, I am not standing alone. In fact, I can be certain that I am joining in the struggle we've been living through for a long, long time. I am an American-born child of Cuban refugees who immediately on arrival were granted political asylum and U.S. citizenship. My grandfather died by suicide 3 months after arriving from Cuba in 1971. The cause of his death and the events surrounding the tragic loss is a topic my family does not discuss. In secret, some of the women tell me he died because he never found a job, and he feared his daughters would end up working in factories instead of getting an education. After his death, his fears came true. 3 of his daughters did end up working on the assembly line of a multinational corporation. Overcome with grief, my grandmother rarely left her bedroom and complained of constant migraine headaches until she died in January of 2017 at the age of 96. She never worked a day outside of her home. I am not sure she was capable or felt she was able to face the world outside her home. One of the few benefits of being a Cuban refugee and consequently being granted political asylum is getting access to public assistance. She received money from Social Security every month, but it was not enough to sustain her and her 4 daughters. Economic need was only one of a long list of needs. At the age of 14, while she was still enrolled at the local public high school, my mother, the youngest daughter in this family, began working in a bakery. Her 3 older sisters all went to work for the British multinational company Techform Engineering Limited. At the time, they assembled airplane parts and earned $1.25 an hour, which was 25% less than the California minimum wage of $1.65 set on February 1, 1968. As new arrivals in the U.S., they say it was the only job available to Spanish-speaking Latinas. They worked in hopes of their future unborn children going to school and becoming professionals who would never have to work in a factory a day in their lives. My theological education began with my grandmother, and though I was the benefactor of my grandmother and my mother's struggle, when I came to receive a formal theological education, I learned the very things they told me, and they showed me that these were in fact true. Weeds can flourish in unwanted places because their roots will search for what they need to grow and spread. You've seen this, no doubt. Weeds pushing through cracks in cement walkways, or weeds overtaking the space in a garden in part because they take the resources they need to grow before those resources are consumed by the plant the gardener prefers. My hope is that today you will take mi abuelita's theology to heart. Hierba mala nunca muere. Let me pray with you. Our benediction today is written by Juliani Gonzalez Nieves, a Latinx theologian who you can look up in glocaltheology.com. She writes this: to the Latin American girl entering seminary, a letter, a poem, a prayer. To the Latin American girl entering seminary with her broken English. To you, whose skin wasn't meant for this coldness, that of the winter and that of the people. A ella who receives stares because her outfit is too much or too little. To you, mi niña, who only see yourself represented in the loving faces of janitors and cooks at the dining hall. To you whose first encounter with racism were the words of a pastor who told you, We are the heirs of the Reformation. Your country hasn't even been well evangelized, as if your Christianity were inferior. To you, who always need to prove that you can do the most basic linguistic tasks, because when you have an accent, people think you are dumb. To you, who managed to excel in your classes, even when your country was being devastated by the hurricane of nature and the hurricane of fallen human nature, to you, to me, to the Caribbean, Latin American, and Latinx girls and women who have never been told that there is a place for you in theology, bienvenida. Our abuelas, madres, and tías have cultivated with their faithfulness the spaces for us to encounter God. And there he encounters us. In our forgotten barrios and colonized islands, ahí he calls us. Pero nuestro Dios is not the God of whiteness, nor the God of capital or the American dream. Nuestro Dios is the God of life. He who was named by Hagar, el Dios que nos ve. God bless you.